bearing on what the rates are going to be. It's quite possible that if we allocate costs to the general fund, for example, that are now allocated to the water and sewer fund, we're going to have to make some very tough decisions about what the general fund is going to carry and what it's not. And a part of this process has to be the expense side of the equation. You can't just do a rate study and assume that you're going to straight line your expenses and make up for any deficits with new revenue. I think the community deserves the opportunity to be thoroughly engaged in a budget process that has us going through priorities and taking a hard look at our expenses in terms of what our priorities are. We haven't done that in terms of the rate issues, and I think we need to do that.
Mr. President, could I interject that I would think that there's going to have to be a startup time for whatever kind of citizens committee that is chosen, and it's going to take, if they're going to look at the operation of the CCSD and their staff, they're going to need to have a steep learning curve in trying to identify and understand how these different divisions interact, because I don't think anybody out there that has had any, if there are some that had extensive experiences with a multi-level civic structure, they need to have a background and not come in with a foregone conclusion or just have the idea off the top of their head that sounds pretty good. I think they need a real a ramp up so that they have insight as to how all these pieces work together. And that's going to be a couple of months.
Well, again, that's what we were trying to make it possible so that in some systematic way, those who wanted to could come and identify all the pieces of the CCSD that exist and then put them together in the way they want to and give it back to the community. That's what they asked for, was an oversight or whatever word they want to use that could report to the community. So we figured if we gave you time in an orderly way to come in and examine any part of the district operations, the staff, the reports, or anything else, and come to your own conclusions and report back to the community, because somehow you don't feel us as a representative of the community that we can do that for you. You want another group. So we want to do that. We want to make it so it's systematic and you're able to get at the information that you want in a certain way, and that was our recommendation. So,
okay, we're starting to double talk. Okay, double talk means not to say the same thing that we've said before.
Well, it may be, but I did withdraw it, but it sounds like Don supports this notion as well. I still believe that we should allow people to come forth in a way that makes everything available to them in a way that's the staff can present it to them.
It's available for them if they want to.
It is, and look, here's a copy of our February 2006 loan agreement. You cannot expect even the wisest among us to go through this and understand it in a vacuum. These are very technical documents. They have some very precise verbiage that is incorporated into these documents because of requirements imposed by lenders, basically Wall Street.
At least one of our speakers was an attorney. He went through all the
I understand. I'm an attorney too. I've been practicing law for 31 years. I have difficulty with this because I'm not a bond lawyer. We have got to find a way to have a consensus on what the rules of the game are in terms of how we comply with these bond covenants, how we treat depreciation, how we allocate staff time, whether staff time that is spent on capital projects should be in the operating budget, for example. Issues that have been before this board before, but for which, in my view, there's not been a satisfactory answer.
But isn't that what we want the community input on before we make our decision?
Yeah, but do you, okay, if that's what you want to do, then what you're telling the community is, well, go out and hire your own bond lawyer, go out and hire your own certified public accountant, and then come back and advise us, for example, on whether we're close to being in default or are in default under our bond covenants.
That's what they seem to want.
You can't do that. It is our responsibility to establish what the accounting rules are that are going to be applied here, consistent with generally accepted accounting principles. It's our job to solicit advice from bond counsel as to whether or not we're in default under our bond covenants. And we need to do that before we expect our citizenry to come in with any kind of meaningful suggestions.
Well,
You know? I mean, you can't, you simply can't just do a Pontius Pilate and say, well, you know, they've spoken, now the ball's in their court, they can figure out what to do. That would be a complete and utter abdication of our responsibility, and I just don't want to be a party to that.
well, I'm certainly not suggesting that. I'm just wanting to have every opportunity to gather all the information. Now, I don't know about the bonds, but we
Well,
have had...
listen, a major impetus for this whole rate increase was that we were in default under our bond obligations. I assert that we're not.
Okay.
All right?
Good.
We've got to figure out whether we are or whether we're not.
Okay.
We have to establish what the rules of the game here are in terms of accounting so that we can publish accurate financial statements and give the community a reasonable opportunity to have a level playing field, if you will, and figure out what's important and what's not. The financial statements that we publish drive everything.
Okay. I want to finish what I was saying when that I don't know about bonds, but I do know that we have an audit every year, and it goes back for 30 years. Is that what you said? You have the audits? And I assume that maybe it's not a good company, I don't know, but we've gotten reports on how we manage our money. So yep. I'm not sure about the accounting principles, why those are being called into question.
I'll share with you an email where our auditor is waffling all over the place in terms of whether or not we should be capitalizing certain expenses.
Okay.
And that's a very important issue in terms of the accuracy of our financial statements.
Only you got that email? I didn't get that.
Well, I'll share it with you.
Okay. Yeah.
I think one of the problems
I think we should all have the
I'm
same
sorry.
information. Excuse me.
Well, one of the problems is that we're talking about this one item, which might, at the best, represent 10 or 20% of our budget. There's 80% else, which the layman can understand quite readily, whether we put in new pipes or not, whether we buy a new truck or not. Those are things that most people can understand. And so there's the 20% off the side, which is highly technical and needs a bond councillor to decide. But it's the other part I'm really concerned is the 80%, which is the day-to-day operation of the district and the future plans.
Well, a swing of 20%, for example, would make a difference, entirely make the difference between whether or not we're operating in a deficit situation or a revenue surplus situation. That's a huge, huge issue. And, I just can't, without finding a way to give people the assistance they will surely need in terms of sifting through all of this information, rather than just cutting them adrift by giving them a bunch of paperwork that will take them months to figure out, I think we need to find a way to help them. That's all I'm saying.